Hello, my name is Martin Panter. I'm a doctor in a beautiful area of North Queensland, Australia. I live in Kuranda, which is up in the mountains about 20 kilometers west of the northern Queensland city of Cairns. I'm also a Christian, and I recently read a book by Richard Dawkins entitled The God Delusion. And I was, I suppose, prompted after reading it because Richard Dawkins' contention in this book is not just to inform, but also to convert from belief to unbelief. And I felt that it was important to make a response to this. I actually read the book in a plane going up from Brisbane to Hong Kong and then on to Bangkok a couple of months ago when I was off to work in the refugee camps on the border of Thailand and Burma. And I guess I was challenged from reading it to make a response, not just one out of anger or of objection to what Richard Dawkins says, but a reasoned response. And I have written a letter to him, and I'd like to read that letter to you. I've already recorded this a couple of times, so I apologize if it seems a bit stale, but YouTube unfortunately rejected it the first time because it was too long. And so what I'm going to do is record it in 3 parts of about 8-9 minutes each, because in total it's around about 25 minutes. So I want to start just by reading a paragraph from the 2nd chapter of the book, perhaps for those of you who don't know the book, to state the remit of Dawkins and really where he starts off from. And I think this will give you a pretty good understanding of his approach to the Christian faith. This is what Richard Dawkins, who is Professor of the Knowledge of Science at New College, Oxford University in England, says. The God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all fiction, jealous and proud of it, a petty, unjust, unforgiving control freak, a vindictive, bloodthirsty ethnic cleanser, a misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, filicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, sadomasochistic, capriciously malevolent bully. So I think that sets the scene for how Richard Dawkins views Christianity. And I believe as Christians we need to uphold the integrity of God's character, and that's primarily the reason I wrote the letter to Dr. Dawkins. It is not intended to be a pattern for anyone else who wishes to respond or a template, but simply an encouragement to those who have read the book and might themselves perhaps have been a little discouraged to know that we have to contend for the truth. In the Bible, in the book of Jude, the author tells us to contend earnestly for the truth. And this has been my aim in writing to Richard Dawkins. So I'll keep an eye on the time, and after about another 5 or 6 minutes I'll stop, and that will be part 1. And then if you wish to hear the rest of the letter, you can tune in to part 2 and part 3 of YouTube. I will actually give you my email at the beginning. I was giving it at the end just in case any of you wish to contact me for questions or for correspondence. It is Martin, M-A-R-T-I-N _Panter, P-A-N-T-E-R, @hotmail.com. I'll also repeat that at the end of the video. So we'll start off with a letter and I'll finish with 1 or 2 short comments at the end. Here goes. Dear Professor Dawkins, I have just read your fascinating and thought-provoking new book, The God Delusion, which kept me occupied almost the entire length of a flight from Brisbane to Hong Kong and on to Bangkok, even perching the book on the tray table during meal service so as not to interrupt my reading. It is elegantly and eloquently written and argues the case very persuasively, and I congratulate you for that. However, if, as stated clearly, that one of its main purposes was not only to inform, but also to convert from belief to unbelief, certainly as far as this reader is concerned, it entirely failed in its undertaking. Perhaps I may be permitted to give you my reasons for this, in a manner that I trust is both honest and courteous, as well as being challenging, and to use your own oft-repeated phrase in the book, raising your consciousness level. I note from the preface the great encouragement and support that your wife gave you during both the writing and proofreading of the book, including the reading aloud of the final proofs. Would that all authors would do the same before publication. I don't obviously know your wife or even her name, but I have little doubt that she is highly intelligent, probably also a good looker, and a wonderful companion and partner to you. Now, were I, or anyone else for that matter, to write or say anything publicly which either insulted or defamed her, I have no doubt whatever that you would leap to her defense and quite rightly seek either an apology, or if the misdemeanor or insult were severe enough, take either myself or any other perpetrator to court. As a former zoologist in my early life, but for the last 25 years or so a clinician with interests in both internal and tropical medicine, but also entirely by choice, primarily because I believe it to be true, a Christian, I think I have the right and also responsibility to uphold the integrity of God's character against the quite heinous accusations you make against him, although you disbelieve his very existence. In the opening paragraph of chapter 2 on page 31, I am aware of your clearly stated complete disbelief in anything supernatural, but the epithets and adjectives used to describe the so-called Old Testament God seem hardly directed at a non-being or even some form of spectre, but appear targeted and bitterly personal. I would have to comment that I believe your descriptions are all taken entirely out of context and are randomly and deliberately pejorative and malevolent. Taking the whole testimony of both the Old and New Testament, as the God portrayed in both is the same, God's character that comes through, if examined dispassionately and objectively, is almost the exact opposite of the imaginary entity that you describe. I would rephrase your opening paragraph something along the following lines. The God of the Bible, of both Old and New Testaments, is arguably the most awesome and most loving entity in the universe, supremely just and righteous in all of his ways, forgiving and merciful, always and patiently preferring mercy over judgment, his love completely unconditional, his righteous judgment awful and all-consuming, his dazzling and radiant holiness purer than the driven snow, his righteousness supreme and unchanging throughout eternity, the only being, visible or invisible, worthy of mankind's praise, adoration, and worship. That is the end of part 1. If you'd like to tune into YouTube to a Christian response to Richard Dawkins' book, The God Delusion, you can shortly find part 2 and part 3. Thank you.